So yes, I'm going to be filling in for Tony this evening for his portion of the announcements. I want to welcome you all to the Anderson Museum. We're pleased to have you all here. I'm Ryan Crowley, the residency director. I've got some housekeeping announcements before we move into the main event, Artist Talk by Eliza Williams. Please take a moment to silence your phones, and I'd like to ask parents to please supervise your children while in the museum. We're presenting this talk and reception tonight in conjunction with the Roswell Museum, continuing the tradition of RAiR's solo exhibitions. Thank you, Suzette. Continuing the tradition of RAiR solo exhibitions that have historically been held at the Roswell Museum, which is closed due to the impact of the October 2024 flood. Some of the folks from the Roswell Museum are here tonight helping out as they continue to partner with us for RAiR exhibitions. We thank them for their help, and we wish them all the best in their ongoing recovery. The lecture tonight is being recorded and will be available on the Roswell Museum Facebook page. This exhibition was sponsored by grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and from State Arts Agency New Mexico Arts. We're grateful for their support. New Mexico Arts also helped pay for the printing of the beautiful brochures for ASH's exhibition. Some coming events here at AMOCA. On March 12th, we'll be having an opening reception for the Roswell Independent School District Student Art Show, featuring works by middle school and high school art students. That's next Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. The show runs through April 1st. Our museum piano series starts later this month with 4 different piano recitals from international pianists. Kirill Glidkovsky, sorry for that, will return by popular demand. He'll play a program featuring romantic piano favorites, including works by Bach, Mozart, Schubert, and Gershwin. This recital will be Sunday, March 15th at 3 p.m. Additional upcoming performances here at AMOCA will include Lanju Bao Ge on April 26th, Ben Cosgrove on June 23rd, and Erica Sipes on September 20th. We're really pleased to be able to bring all this music to Roswell. Okay, from my end, on the residency side, a couple announcements. RAiR has partnered with ENMU Roswell for a Meet the RAiR Artists Artist Talk series. We started that last month with a great talk by Charlie Smith, one of our recent RAiR residents. And it was a great talk, and we're looking forward to hearing Andy Van Din's artist talk this coming Tuesday morning. The talk will begin at 9:30 a.m. in the Commons area of the ITC building within ENMUR's campus. If you Google map the location, it'll take you to the parking lot nearest to the ITC building, and it's just a short walk from there to the actual space. If anybody has any questions about how to find that, it's a little complicated because of the campus over there, but please feel free to come up to me and ask if you have any questions about that. It'd be great to see some more folks there. After Eliza Williams' talk, artist talk, we'll have 15 minutes or so for questions, and then we'll go into the gallery for an opening reception of their exhibition titled Bitter Lake. We hope you'll stay after the reception tonight for a public dinner in the artist's honor. The cost is $10 for adults, $5 for children. On the menu tonight is green curry and rice, gluten-free, with a trio of toppings, coconut, peanuts, and cilantro. For dessert, there will be chocolate cake. I'm just going to share a brief bio for Ash and a couple thoughts to introduce their work. Eliza Williams, pronouns they, them, grew up in Blue Ridge Mountains in Southwest Virginia and makes work about interspecies communication and non-human language. They have exhibited nationally and internationally and often work with scientists, including collaborations and research projects at various research institutions. Ash has taught painting, sculpture, color theory, and interspecies collaboration courses as a visiting faculty member in various colleges. And this coming fall, Ash will be joining Idaho State University's faculty as an assistant professor in painting. Eliza Williams makes paintings and sculptures that blush. as if their paintings must have eaten suns and moons and fog. There's a luminous glow just beneath the surface. Tender conversations between paintings and sculptures are supported by Ash's skill as an incredible colorist and draftsperson. In this exhibition titled Bitter Lake, amidst a densely populated wall of paintings and drawings, hangs a small painting, really small, of a spherical murmuration, which shows us Ash's attention to subtle detail and brushstroke exactitude. I've come to see this wall as its own kind of murmuration, like a cloud of organized chances, and a more candid view into Ash's universe of process as it continues to expand. Here in Roswell, we're rapidly moving into spring, and the works in Bitter Lake are like a pulsing signal welcoming the masses of creatures and plants soon to be fluttering and crawling around our windowsills. Please join me in welcoming Ash Eliza Williams.
Thank you, Ryan. All right. So for the first half of this talk, I'm going to be talking about the work that I've made over the past 10 years or so. And then the second half of the talk will be about the work that I've made here at Roswell Artist Residency. All right. So to give you a little bit of a backstory, when I was a kid, I was very, very shy and didn't speak for a while. I didn't speak in school at all, and my parents put me in sign language, and there was much concern. And I really just wanted to be a bioluminescent sea creature. I wanted to be able to communicate through light, or I wanted to maybe be a snail or a tree. I basically wanted to be a creature that could communicate without human language. And that led to being an artist and spending a lot of time with scientists and thinking about language and the expansiveness of language. What is language? What is connection? What does that look like? One of the words I really love is Umwelt. The writer Ed Young talks about Umwelt in his book, An Immense World. So Umwelt in German means environment, but in the context of ecology, it means the sensory world of a being. So humans have a specific Umwelt, centipede has a specific Umwelt. A centipede senses the world with its feelers and it sees things in a different way than humans see things. And we have a very specific sensory world. And I like thinking about how the Umwelt of a centipede and the Umwelt of a human overlap. What does that look like when they overlap? What color is it? What texture is it? Also, different humans have different Umwelts, and I like thinking about those relationships. So this is just a painting. This is a painting, an oil painting of my hand holding a caterpillar. And I'm thinking about the relationship between a human and a caterpillar, and also this kind of seduction and aversion. I'm always thinking about, I guess, what it feels like to interact with a creature. Sometimes it's hard to hold an insect. It can be a little uncomfortable. And so some of that is in my work. So I think of all of my work as communication attempts. And so I've been making communication attempts for the past 10 years, and they take a lot of different forms, but this is a painting. So there's an oil painting on paper and a shelf underneath with two little sculptures. One is a found rock, the other is a found bit of wool. And then there is a conversation between the rock and the mist. And the mist is kind of blushing out of the rock. And sometimes I feel like the rock, and sometimes I feel like the mist. And these are a bunch of different communication attempts. And with these works, I started out with a question: what would an introverted sculpture and an extroverted painting do if they were sitting next to each other? What would that look like? And then that led me to think about all kinds of different connections. What if a painting tried to touch a sculpture? What if a sculpture was hiding behind a painting? I'm thinking about relationship dynamics and how we reach each other, and if it's possible to ever fully reach each other, and then also relationships between other beings. And these are all mostly oil on paper and oil on panel. Some of them are gouache, and the sculpture materials are found objects and wool and found rocks and plaster and metal and all sorts of things. So I've always been obsessed with rocks. I think I'm interested in rocks because I love awkward creatures and kind of quiet creatures, and I have a lot of sympathy for, or empathy for these kinds of creatures, and I think a rock is this kind of creature. So I lived in Colorado for many years, and I started staring at rocks. So I would just sit in front of a rock and stare at it. And I started making these films called films of still objects. Let's see if this plays. Oops, it doesn't. So this is, I made a bunch of films of rocks. And it's just basically a film of a rock. So there's a rock and the landscape changes a little bit behind it. And that's all it is. And so I liked kind of forcing people to come to the gallery or the museum and have that experience of staring at rocks. Oh, perfect. So that goes on for a really long time. And so after I made those works, I made a bunch of paintings too. So I was living in Colorado. I was going for walks and runs in these amazing boulder fields, and there were incredible boulders that, in a way, reminded me of people and also of animals. Just the colors of the rocks and the way they changed with the light. There was kind of the colors would change completely as the light changed. And I was thinking about sentience, aliveness, like whether a creature is alive or not. And I started making these portraits of rocks with trying to paint them with the same kind of sensitivity that one would use to paint a portrait, like a portrait of a human. And then I'm jumping forward a little bit, but after Colorado, I left Colorado and I spent a year going to a bunch of different residencies. So I was in China, I was in Thailand, I was in Germany, I was kind of all over Europe, and I got to spend some time with my sister who was doing a Fulbright in Berlin. And she started a group called the Sprechgesang Institute, which is, that word in German means between speaking and singing. And this group was a group of artists and scientists and mathematicians and musicians kind of all working together to also explore ideas of language and connection. So I included this in there just to show that I make a lot of paintings, but I also collaborate a lot, and that's a really important part of my practice. So after the residency year, I ended up in Massachusetts. This is MassMoCA, Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art. They had a program that doesn't exist anymore where they funded artists to move to North Adams. And so I was part of that cohort, and it was incredible. And this is my studio there. I also did the residency at MassMoCA and lived there for a long time. And when I was there, that's when I started this body of work. So I continued to be obsessed with rocks, but now I've started cutting out rocks. So this is actually a painting. It kind of looks like a sculpture, but it's a painting, it's flat. And I was cutting out the paintings and bringing them into the landscape and kind of composing with the landscape, which just kind of perceptually as a painter was really interesting to me. I would hold the painting up to the sky and think about how the shapes fit in with each other and the way colors related to each other. This is just an image of the process. So a painting, you cut it out, and then I brought it into a swamp. and kind of played with it. And I was thinking about collaboration with landscapes. Like, is it possible to collaborate with a landscape? And then this has been a practice that's continued for almost 10 years now. Everywhere I go, I try to bring these paintings, and it's a way to kind of relate to the landscape in different ways. And I'm also thinking about migration, so the migration of ecosystems and the migration of creatures. You know, when a creature has to migrate because of climate change, if it gets too hot, they can't do it alone. They have to come with their community. So in a way, as I was kind of moving through the landscape with these creatures, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about climate change and movement and how we have to kind of take care of each other. And my hands are really pink because it's very, very cold in that center picture. Then the pandemic hit, and I started on a project, on a graphic novel project. And I've always been interested in graphic novels, and this will relate to some of the work in the show, which is why I included it. I started making a graphic novel about Rachel Carson's life. So Rachel Carson, the great environmentalist who wrote Silent Spring, she has an incredible life story. She also had a really interesting friendship with her friend Dorothy Freeman that was maybe somewhat romantic, and I was interested in that relationship. And I was also just kind of interested in her relationship with non-human beings too. And the format of the graphic novel really helped me to think about time in different ways. I was able to kind of break up the paintings and think about how time was moving differently during the pandemic. And this is a piece, like the one on the left is a piece from the graphic novel, and then the one on the right is a painting. And as I started working on these, the graphic novel project turned into a painting project, which is something that happens sometimes. And some of this project kind of directly influenced the work here at the museum. So at the end of the pandemic, I got to spend some time at Sitka Center for Art and Ecology, which was amazing, and Mountain Lake Biological Station, and I started collaborating with some scientists, and I started learning about pollinators and orchids. And so orchids and pollinators have this amazing relationship. There are some orchids that can only be pollinated by a single pollinator. And so that makes them very vulnerable to climate change and other kinds of losses of biodiversity. But I also think it's very romantic and weird and interesting that this plant and this pollinator co-evolve. So they actually co-evolve to fit with each other, because the pollinator has to be a certain size to fit within the orchid. And so I think of that as kind of a communication through deep time. And I also went to see the Hilma af Klint show at the Guggenheim around this time, so I was thinking about her work too. And then this led to a bunch of other projects. I was teaching at the time with a bunch of other kind of artist teachers in the Valley or in Western Massachusetts, and we were all working on a project together. This is a project started by Sandy Litchfield. And we were thinking about the year 3000 and trying to imagine better futures together as kind of as artists, scientists, philosophers, mathematicians. And I started making these paintings of future pollinators. I was imagining a future world where there aren't any pollinators, and I was imagining what kind of religion this future civilization might have, and maybe perhaps they would probably revere pollinators, maybe pollinator deities. So I started making these kind of imaginary future pollinators as part of this big collaborative project, which was a kind of an amazing thing to do during the pandemic, to be around a bunch of different people thinking about how to create a better future. And then I included this one because I've been making color studies forever, and some of the color studies are here at the museum. This was right after the pandemic ended. I spent 3 months with Iraq again. So there was a very enormous boulder that I visited every single day, and I just had an experience with the rock. I was trying to understand this rock, and I used color to kind of create a diary of my relationship with this rock. And I've done this with a lot of other kind of creatures too. It's a way for me to kind of think about this creature and my relationship with it as our two umwelts or Umwelten meet. And then this is an image of the color samples in a gallery, and then the images on the back wall are from the graphic novel that turned into a painting, series. So I was already making these color studies when I met my partner. So we met 8 years ago, and my partner, Jason, is an astronomer. He's right here. You all have met him. Some of you have. So I had already been making these color strips, and then when I got to travel with him to an observatory, I realized that astronomers use color to understand everything there is to know in the universe. So he's using spectroscopy to understand the distance between galaxies and the chemical composition and the heat emitted, and all the information comes in like this with color strips. Emission lines and absorption lines, and it looks very much like the strips I was making. So I like thinking about the color as kind of a language through deep time again. So a kind of a communication or trying to understand a very ancient thing. And then the one on the right is a pollinator with a color sample beside it. And it was when I was at the observatory that I really started thinking about darkness. Also, I'm an insomniac, so I think about darkness a lot. And I go on a lot of night walks, so darkness and the nighttime is really important to me. And right after going to the observatory, I got to go to Shoals Marine Lab, which is a field station off the coast of Maine on an island. And I got to spend time with the scientists and the students there, and I started asking them the question, why is darkness important? And so here's some images of the lab. And so some of the answers to that question were, darkness is important for the sound of crickets, to rest, to feel small, for a birthday cake, to find quiet, to see lightning. And all the answers ranged from really scientific to very poetic and strange, and I love that kind of mix of things. And I ended up making kind of a series of kind of sketches, field notes, footnotes that are on the left here, and these are actually in the show. So that's one of the only pieces that I made, that's in the show that I made before coming here. And then this is the last piece, or part of the last series I made before coming here. It's called Dreams of an Orange Fruit Dove. And I got to spend some time at the Museum of Comparative Zoology in Boston, and I was really thinking about the history of illustration and the history of zoological illustration, and also like natural history museums are kind of strange places. I think there are lots of kind of questions about hierarchy and which creatures we value more than other creatures and how we organize things. And so I was seeing all these illustrations, and typically, you know, a botanical illustration will be an idealized version of a creature, right? It's not the actual bird; it's an idealized bird. So I kind of wanted to see if I could make a drawing of an actual bird, a specific bird, and then I wanted to, instead of painting what the bird looked like, I wanted to think about its inner world. So with this piece, I was thinking about one specific orange fruit dove, and what does this bird feel? Like, what does it feel like to be a bird in the forest in a rainstorm? What does it feel like to be so small and to have a really high metabolism, and maybe, you know, maybe time would move differently, and is there a way to capture that in a painting? And what does it feel like to migrate? And so I felt like it was an honor to kind of spend a month thinking about what it would be like to be this bird. And this is a close-up of that painting. And also, these are directly influenced by the graphic novel project, too. So I'm using this kind of structure of the graphic novel to kind of play with I guess it allows me to think about the infinity, perhaps, of a creature's inner world. I really do believe that, small creatures have an inner world that is just as vibrant as our own. And one future dream is to make a huge exhibition of the inner world of a very, very, very tiny creature, like a tiny, tiny snail or tiny, tiny a stink bug or something. A huge exhibition about the inner world of a stink bug. This one is a starling, so I'm thinking about the inner world of a starling, and this is just an image of it at the Denver Botanic Gardens, and an image of some of these at a show in New Jersey, right before I came here. All right. So now I'm in New Mexico, and this is just an image of my studio. The image on the left is Carlsbad Caverns, which totally blew my mind, and then the image on the right is the sky, because everyone told me before coming here that I would not be able to handle the skies, and that's actually true. I watch the sunset every night. One of the main reasons I applied to this residency is because I had never been to the desert. I didn't know anything about the desert, and I wanted to get to know the creatures of the desert. I was so curious about the creatures of the desert, and I have not been disappointed at all. So there are so many creatures. There is a bug on every cactus. I got to hold a tarantula. There are these incredible shiny, shiny beetles I've never seen before. Even at the sand dunes at White Sands, there are little insects. I have no idea how they survive. This was one of the very first paintings that I made coming here, and it was my partner and I moved across the whole country from Massachusetts with our cat screaming and 3 fish tanks sloshing around, and it was kind of terrible. And then when we got here, we were moving boxes, and I moved one box, and there was this little kind of glittery, beautiful moment, and I didn't know what it was, and I realized it was a snake. It was a tiny, tiny, tiny little snake, a tiny pink snake that I learned later is a blind snake, I think. That's what it was. And it was just the most magical thing. And so I made this sketch on the left. Of course, it doesn't look anything like the snake. The snake moved so quickly, couldn't take a photograph of it. But I don't usually work from photographs anyway. I usually work from my memory. So the image on the left is a sketch, and then the one on the right is the painting. And then this painting is in the show. And it's called Gentle Snake Eating a Flower. So these are just some more images from the residency. Just having my studio with this incredible window, and the clouds change behind it. I can't believe this place. The frogs, I didn't expect to find frogs here. We have a pet tarantula all summer long who we say hello to every morning. I've had this amazing sketchbook practice here where each morning I work in my sketchbook for 30 minutes, and that's been incredible. And then my cat, who very much loves it here because it's so warm, there's many sunbeams, she's living her best life. The Dragonfly Festival was incredible. I spent so much time at Bitter Lake, so this is one of the reasons why the title of the show is Bitter Lake. I spent probably more time at Bitter Lake than any other place. And also some of the science events have been really amazing. Spending time with the snake scientists, learning about snakes and dragonflies and birds. And then the image on the right is McDonald Observatory, because we got to go down there again because it's within driving distance of Roswell. This is another piece from the show, and I was walking around and noticing that all of the prickly pears, our mini prickly pears, had a crunch out of them. There's just a crunch, and I didn't know why. I didn't know who made the crunch, like a bite mark. And I like thinking about who this mysterious creature is. Maybe it's a bug, maybe it's a carnivore. And so then I started to paint. I decided to paint this cactus. And then, so this is the sketch, a tiny little sketch. And then the one on the right is the piece in the show. Two cacti next to each other, each with a bite mark. The bite mark has expanded a little bit. And there's some information underneath, some data under two glass cloches. Here are some more images from Bitter Lake. Seeing the sandhill crane migration, I'll never forget. I also realized as I was kind of putting together this talk that a lot of the work that I've made here is kind of a response to sensory experiences that are non-visual. So I go on a lot of night walks, and I love just kind of feeling what's happening. So just like feeling the presence of birds, listening to birds, feeling the wind, and then kind of bringing those kind of non-visual feelings back into the studio and then making something visual. This is another piece from the show, Spider and Feast. I got to spend, I had a visitor, a jumping spider spent a very long time with me in the studio, and she just kind of hung out, and I got to observe her, and she was incredible. And I met so many other spiders here. So many good spiders. And that led to this painting. So this is Dreams of an Orb Weaver, and an orb weaver is a kind of spider. And one of the most amazing things about being here is that all the other residents learned that I love collecting little things. And so almost everyone has kind of knocked on my door and brought me like a dead bug or a bit of interesting rock. And Laurie Fader, who you all know, I think, knocked on my door one day and brought me a dead orb weaver spider. And so I took her inside, and she was beautiful. And I was just thinking about what this creature's life was like, why this creature died. And I was thinking about her internal world and what she dreamed about, what she would fear. And I decided to do the same thing that I had been doing. And I was thinking about the dreams of this creature, but I decided to make it a kind of a curiosity cabinet instead. So this is a painting, it's not a sculpture. But, you know, Renaissance era curiosity cabinets were sort of these places where people brought their collections of things to kind of show off. But I like the idea of a curiosity cabinet being kind of the internal world of a being. This is a caterpillar making a nest. One great thing about being here is that we have time to just watch a caterpillar make a nest. And these are some paintings that are in the show. I was thinking about nests, I was thinking about weavings and chrysalises and kind of protection and houses and bodies. So I got to spend some time at the Chihuahuan Desert Research Center, which I highly recommend if you've never been there. It's close to McDonald Observatory, so it's like maybe 2 hours away. And there's an amazing cactus exhibit there, and the cacti look very kind of bodily and wonderful. And I took a zillion pictures, and I think that influenced this work too. And then this is kind of the final piece that I have here. This is called Dreams of a Mantis. So I got to spend some time with a praying mantis. There was a praying mantis that visited us and spent a week on our back porch. I think it was the final days of this mantis because the mantis died. But it was amazing to kind of get to know this creature, and this creature was so sentient and so alive and so responsive. And I was thinking about kind of the stillness of this creature, and also what it would feel like to be this creature. There's some blood splatters in here too, because they're, mantises are actually kind of terrible carnivores too. They're very interesting creatures. So I also brought this. To give you a little bit of backstory, so I'm part of a collaboration called the Sensing Lab, and the Sensing Lab is a bunch of artists who all kind of sense the world in different ways. Meredith Lake, Junli Song, Stephen Vitello, and we are all kind of trying to teach each other about how to expand our sensory worlds. And there's also this amazing group of artists who run something called the Post-Human Press and the Interspecies Library. So all of these groups are kind of coming together, and they're creating a journal of interspecies communication called the Therolinguistics Anthology, which is hard to say. And it's inspired by Ursula K. Le Guin, who is one of my favorite writers ever. She wrote a story called The Author of the Acacia Seeds, and that story is an imaginary journal, like an imaginary science journal, all about the languages of other creatures. So it fits absolutely perfectly with everything I love. So they asked me to write entry, kind of an imaginary entry, into this Therolinguistics Anthology. And so I'm going to read it, and we'll see how it goes. All right. Dreams of a mantis. Everyone knows that dreams are a tedious research subject. Anyone who, upon waking, has had to listen to a spouse or a family member share stories of flying, swimming, or giving a lecture without pants knows how incredibly mind-numbing these accounts can be. The same is true with the dreams of non-human beings, both animal and vegetable. Unfortunately, the Sensing Lab has dedicated the better part of our past year and a significant portion of our research grant to this unpromising subject. The dream diaries of the praying mantis are filled with predictable accounts: prey behavior, eating of lovers, leafy green forests, deserts, clouds, foraging shrews, and other unsurprising elements. There are themes of religious guilt and angst, possibly due to the mantis's name, praying mantis, and sibling rivalry. The mantis is born with roughly 500 siblings that it must outcompete. What is more interesting is the formal structure of these diaries, the gentle green hue of the letters fading into a rough warm brown. The delicate calligraphy and puncture marks are specific to distinct species of mantis. For the mantis, writing is a full-body experience. With incredible strength and precision, it crunches into the writing substrate with its sharp incisors, scattering debris. The debris functions like footnotes, also containing content that must be deciphered, making this a difficult research subject indeed. The strength and virility of mantis writing suggests something almost like pugilism or contemporary dance, scratching back and forth across an arena. This is paired with a splendid and spindly delicacy. It shouldn't come as a surprise that the process of composition for a praying mantis also requires patience. Like the mantis who spends hours completely still, waiting for prey, it seems that it may take a mantis 3 to 4 hours to write a single letter. The combination of gesture, speed, violence, and energy with slowness is what makes these transcriptions so singular within the archives of the languages of non-human beings. Our preliminary findings are intriguing, but require more research. So that was written in the style of Ursula K. Le Guin's short story. And it was fun to write. Okay, so that's Dreams of a Mantis. And then this is just some images of the Sensing Lab project. I put these here because I'm thinking of kind of future projects. We got to spend some time at the sand dunes, and I love thinking about the horizon line here. I want to make some paintings thinking about kind of above and below worlds, and then I'm totally obsessed with cryptobiotic soil, which is this amazing soil that is at bitter lakes and also at bottomless lakes. It's basically soil that's alive, and it eats clouds. So it absorbs moisture and then shares the moisture with the other creatures, so it kind of protects the ecosystem. So I want to make a bunch of work about this soil. And I have 4 more months here, so I might have time to do that. And then this is my final image. So, I love wild creatures, but I also really like domesticated creatures. And these are 2 of my favorite creatures at this residency. This is Joe, the donkey, who lives close to us, and I ride my bike to visit Joe. And this is Peppy, the residency cat, who has kind of adopted us and who we're taking with us. All right. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. And this is just my my website and contact information. Yes.
Talk to me about the empty spaces in the dream dioramas.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. Yeah, okay, so one of the great things about being at this residency is that we have, I mean, I'm in a community of artists. And so I was working on that painting and inviting other artists to come visit my studio, and a couple of them said, why don't you leave that empty? And I had been kind of playing with different ideas, kind of making some empty and some filled up, and I wasn't sure where to go. And so I got feedback from other artists. That's part of it. And also, I guess I'm thinking about, like, there's so much we don't know, too. I mean, all of these are communication attempts. I'm trying to understand another creature, but of course we'll never fully understand another creature. And so I think the emptiness is kind of mystery and openness too. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned your sketchbook practice and that it was time. I wonder if you could talk some more about that. What did it do for you?
Sketchbook, yes. I try to, work in my sketchbook for 30 minutes, and I think it's really good for my brain because I tell myself when I'm working in my sketchbook that I'm not working on any project. So it's just playing, and I try to go straight from dreaming. Basically, I'll wake up and make a cup of tea and then mark in my sketchbook, and I'll try not to think because sometimes I do that too much. So I actually put a sign on the wall that said "Don't think," right across from where I work on my sketchbook. And I always work in gouache too, so that makes me be really loose because gouache is kind of harder to work with for me.
Are you able to pull anything out of that, or is that entirely just exercise?
Well, I tell myself that I'm not going to do anything with it, but then of course I look through it and get excited about it, and sometimes things turn into paintings. Yes.
Do the rocks talk to you, and if so, how? Is it sensory or audible or feeling or intuitive?
Oh man, that's a very complicated question. I mean, I want them to. I mean, right. I mean, that's the question. What is language? Does a rock have a language? I'm not sure. Maybe. I mean, I do feel like kind of just appreciating a being is a kind of communication. At least I think it is. Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the relationship between the 2D and the 3D in your work. I mean, this question first came up for me with the the rocks that you're kind of taking out into the landscape, and what that is like to kind of hold this 2D thing, and then seeing almost the graphic novel cells, kind of turning into these 3-dimensional curiosity boxes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, right. It was so interesting to kind of to turn the paintings kind of into sculptures in a way by bringing them out into the world. And that was just kind of an experiment. I mean, I started out with just a piece of paper that I cut up, and then I happened to hold it against I was at Sitka Center for Art and Ecology, and I kind of held up this negative space to a window, and then things happened, and that really just kind of made me excited. But I think, a lot of the relationships between paintings and sculptures some of them are kind of about natural history museums too. Like, what is a specimen and what is the specimen and what is the illustration? Like, what is the relationship between these two? And kind of flipping that a little. And then I think a lot about hierarchies, right? Like, which beings do we think are important, and which ones do we think are not important, and why? And so, like, being able to make a tiny, tiny sculpture of a hurricane, and then a really huge painting of a lichen. There's something interesting about that too, like putting the big thing next to the small thing and making something 3-dimensional and something 2-dimensional. I don't know. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Well, I needed a job. So this was my first, so another great thing about being at this residency is that I had a lot of time to apply to things, and this is my first year really applying to tenure track teaching positions, and I wanted to apply to places in interesting locations. So like there's this place, Pocatello, Idaho, is close to Yellowstone, it's close to the Tetons, it's close to craters of them. It seems like you know Idaho. I had never been to Idaho, so that seemed like an adventure. So I decided to take a leap, see how it goes. And also, I mean, I applied to teaching jobs because I love teaching too.
And it's a tenure track position.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to return to your graphic novel project?
Oh, I love books so much. And I'm definitely going to return to a graphic novel project, for sure. Yeah, I'm working on some grants right now, so we'll see how that turns out. But yes, I'm obsessed with books. So I have so many writer friends. I just love, I love the intimacy of books. And I've never really made art books before, and I really, really want to. Huh.
When you're looking at your subject matter or you're imagining it, do you actually see that glow?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. Maybe sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm really interested in right in the darkness and the light, and in the perceptual experience of kind of being in the darkness and seeing light emerge. I got a chance to go out in the woods with an ornithologist friend, and he was using a heat sensor, which I never experimented with before. Basically, you can put kind of a heat sensor, like you can point a heat sensor into the woods, and the beings that are alive will illuminate. Yes, totally blew my. So I could see little illuminated mice. And then he told me that the trees were slightly illuminated, and it's because they have a metabolism. There's like the movement going on, so they're slightly illuminated. And then a friend of mine kind of put her hand on a tree, and with using the heat sensing lamp, put the lamp on the tree after her hand was on the tree, and the illumination of her hand stayed on the tree. Yeah, but it was real, but also really magical too. Yeah.
I can see that.
Thank you, Ash.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. The gallery is open and can enjoy the show. Thank you for coming.